Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar, Being Part of a Cooperative Learning Commons. I'm Erin Hancock, the Program Manager for Cooperative Management Education. I'm joined here with Wendy Holmes, who I'll give a more thorough introduction to in just a moment here. But I wanted to share a little bit about what we'll be talking about today, as you may have seen as you registered for this webinar. So, we, of course, within the Sobey School of Business are interested in doing education that elevates what's happening in the cooperative economy worldwide. And that's why many of our students and instructors are here today, is to dig deeper into what that means, because it's not just the content that we deliver, which we know is really valuable in terms of learning how to be a better cooperative leader and manager, but it's also so much about how we structure our courses. And so when we think about group work, and we think about learning from each other, combining our skills, compensating for, supporting each other, all of those things that sometimes present as opportunities and sometimes as challenges are really part of what it means to also be a good cooperative manager. And so we bring that into the learning environment, and that is a very textured experience, I think everyone can attest to. And of course, when I talk about the learning environment, mainly here we're focused on the master's program, the grad diploma, and the certificate in co-op management, but we try to bring those things into our exec ed courses and our study tours and everything else as well. So today we're going to dig a bit deeper into how we create a co-op learning commons, or how we create the experience of being part of a cooperative while you're in this education, and how it is that we live the principles within this learning environment. And to guide us through all of that is a very smart person that we're very lucky to have as part of our team, and also is a 2014 graduate of the Master of Management in Cooperatives and Credit Unions program, Wendy Holmes. She also has a master's in agricultural economics, and she's also been working in Cuba with the Co-op Index tool, which is really looking at how do we integrate the ICA, the International Co-op Alliance, and the Mondragon principles into the practice of cooperatives in terms of member experience and at the organizational level. She currently teaches our Global Economics and Global Economy and Society course within the master's program. And she also has led a field study with the University of British Columbia to Cuban cooperative farms. There's a lot more I could say about Wendy. She's a pretty impressive and pretty busy person. And so we're really thankful that she's not only gone through this education, but also is a great advocate and now a leader as an instructor in our program. So I'll turn it over to you, Wendy. Thank you for being here. And again, folks, as questions come up, please enter them into the chat and we'll take them.
Okay. Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Erin, for all your help. And just one housekeeping thing. Sometimes that control panel pops up, and if I touch it to go away, the PowerPoint disappears. So you may, and I can get it back pretty quickly, but you may find a few little things like that. So I'm really happy to be here this morning. Thank you to all of you for, as Erin said, taking your time. I will jump right in. What I want to talk about in this webinar is, first of all, how I came to be doing this to begin with, and that relates to my teaching Tom's course of 5210 last year, and sort of where we are in terms of encroaching global crises. The question that that was posed to me by both those two, the last course and where we are, was how can we amp up the offering of this program? How can we reach the full potential of co-op learning fast? Because we certainly, and communities and society certainly needs it. Is there a sweet spot that we can find to allow co-ops to, say with confidence, we are the change you've been waiting for. We are ready to take on a central role in the 21st century economy. I talk a little bit about my inspiration in this was also a conversation I recalled with John McNamara back in Imagine 2012. He said something that, well, I'll talk about it more in the thing, but it sort of got stamped in my brain. Everything works better as a co-op. So, if that's true, and I don't have any reason to doubt John, why not a learning co-op? And if we think about that, what might a learning co-op look like? If each cohort was a learning co-op, there'd be a greater sense of democracy, a greater sense of responsibility, a whole bunch of engagement, and of course the Stefano's golden reciprocity would be functioning within these cohorts. So I thought, well, how can we explore this a little bit more? So the last thing I'm going to talk about is what I've done so far to move this forward. It started innocently enough. I was asked last spring to teach Tom's course, Emerging Global Economies and Society 2. And Tom has been, ever since I listened to him talk at an event when I was on Van City's board and scurried to sit next to him at the lunch table and got up convinced I was taking the program. Tom has been a mentor of mine for a long time. And so being asked to teach Tom's course was a bit intimidating, to say the least. And I thought, well, what can I bring to the table here? What can I possibly add to this? And as I started the course, I saw learners struggling with the same exact things that happened when I took this program as part of the 2010 cohort. There was a really rich diversity of backgrounds, wonderful diversity of people come to the table with professional and life experiences that were so important to share. But there was also this gap in how we individually perceived and approached the learning experience. And this became a weakness, or is a weakness. Some people are naturally active and engaged, and others are more what you might describe as sort of outliers. Some pull their weight, and I'm talking about, my cohort, any cohort, no cohort in particular, but in general. Some people pull their weight, and then some, and others, there's always a reason why they just couldn't get it done in time. Some played really well with others, and others not so much. And I remember in the program, and I know you will relate to this, I'm sure, in some small groups that you were placed in each semester, you felt a lot of synergy, and that synergy made it a very exciting learning experience. And in other groups, there were challenges. So this white on white, sorry for the lack of contrast, but the thing is, when you lose that synergy, you lose learning. And the metaphorical water cooler argument suggests that you can sit in your cubicle, you can study, you can work, you can pay attention to what's being said to you in a video, in a book, but it's the conversations that occur with your colleagues around the metaphorical water cooler that produce creative thought, that broaden perspective, and that contribute to real learning. And, quite simply, no surprise, sharing ideas and engaging with others produces better outcomes. Drawing again on personal experience, my cohort got it together in the end, but I always felt, it would have been really nice if we could have gotten this together in the beginning, how much more powerful this 3.5-year learning experience could have been. And added to that, my own reflection, the current situation. I'm teaching 2210. Remember, this is like the first module. I think everybody feels a little bit of trauma from how the 20th century neoclassical economics and market fundamentalism have brought us so close to the brink of economic and ecological collapse. We're like Thelma and Louise, pedal to the metal, heading for the cliff. And by and large, I think right now there's much more engagement in it, but it's a serious time. We can't waste time. We have to hit that sweet spot in our programming now. So how do we make the curriculum catch and live up to its potential? How do we deepen the co-op management education difference to realize the potential that was woven into this program by Probo Hershey and Tom, and together with Dennis Dieters and John Chamard, Stephen, and the unwavering support, of course, we have to mention then President Colin Dodds. So channeling a little bit both Elizabeth Warren and Ha-Joon Chang, thing one is the secret sauce of the St. Mary's Co-op Management Education Program is not just learning about cooperatives. It's the rich environment in which of co-op learning in which it's been so carefully set. Thing two, John McNamara's statement to me in Quebec City and Imagine 2012, there's almost nothing that would not work better as a co-op. And thing three, we're using Dahl in 5210, reading Dahl's preface to Economic Democracy. If democracy is justified in governing the state, then it must also be justified in governing economic enterprises. The sort of next step in that, when you're thinking about education, is why not democratize the learning process itself? Not just the administration and the way the university functions, but actually the learning process itself, because we have such a wonderful lab to do this in the way the courses have been set up. So why not think about a learning co-op? As Tom notes in conversations with me that led up to me giving this webinar, it was Stephen who engaged from the start on the importance of co-op learning and the power of strung discussions and increasing student retention by having them teach each other. But as I mentioned, it has its challenges. Stephen noted, and I thought this was an interesting way to break it down, 30% of our learners are not comfortable with online learning. They find it impersonal, or they have in the past, or their perception of it has been that it was impersonal or isolating, alienating. 30% love it. Tom said they type well. I tried to put a little laugh emoji in this, but my PowerPoint wouldn't take it. They are connected to their technology. They find the schedule very flexible and convenient, and they're keeners by temperament. And the rest have a love-hate relationship with the program. In his orientation comments, Tom notes how it was their intent from the start to promote this concept of cooperative learning, and how they could harness that idea by becoming and acting like a cooperative, supporting each other and making the cooperative values come alive in how they work together. Tom suggested a regular graduate program. In a regular graduate program, success would be if they graduated with good grades, but this program's different. This program is also an important part of success, is having everyone in the group graduate together, a result of fully living the humanity of the natural world endowed with them and as social as well as individual beings. That being an accomplished individual is all that capitalism demands and values, but cooperation allows that we fully exercise our human, individual, and social dimensions together. Capitalism erodes nature, society, and democracy, and humanity and cooperation builds on the best of our whole humanity and builds a much better world. So today, on the brink of ecological and social disaster, we need to do this quickly. Why not explore this idea? So last spring in 5210, I encouraged learners to think about this. And at the end of the course, I produced a course analytics report and brought to the attention of CME administration what we had discovered through this process of trying to think like a learning co-op. In this course analytics report, we identify 4 areas of dynamics that would improve if learners were also members of a learning co-op. And the 4 elements we chose, and they could be, it could be others on this list, but we decided to work with democracy, responsibility, engagement, and reciprocity. So we'll take a little bit of quick run through now on what we did in each of these areas. And the caveat I have to say is this process was led by me. It would be so much more effective if learners themselves established this framework as part of their learning co-op. So it drags from the fact that I was moving this forward as opposed to it coming up to me, but I think we worked with it really well in that cohort. So there were 4 areas: democracy, responsibility, engagement, and reciprocity. So democracy. If it was a learning co-op, it would be a more democratic learning environment. So how do we flatten the hierarchy of academia and give learners a more democratic engagement with it all. And I took from the beginning that my role in this is a learning leader or coach. I viewed myself as a guide to help this group of learners work through this material in a robust and engaged way, and go out and pick up stuff that was missing and bring it back to the table, to put it on the table, and also to take direction from the cohort in terms of things that they'd like to see changed, things that worked, things that didn't. To ensure the grading and evaluation process was equitable and accessible and understood by everyone, I created a set of grading rubrics, and they were posted in the course material, and questions and feedbacks were invited. Grading rubrics, for those of you who haven't worked with them, are matrices which explain to you exactly how your grade is quantified. And so it was a very transparent process of the evaluation. And I posted them because I wanted the learners to be engaged with, is this what you think a good evaluation of your time in this course is revealed by? So that was a two-way process. And also set up horizontal communication platforms. On every module, we had the discussion threads, but we also had a thread called Wendy's Corner. Now I'm calling it WC, and WC is water closet, so maybe it's sort of the washroom. But anyway, that was to encourage open feedback on anything that was not so much related to a question on the reading and video, but on the course, or basically to support a bidirectional learning process. And so, for example, in the accessibility report from the course analytics, we flagged material that was scanned, not digital, because it was difficult to access for many people. Some people wanted to be able to put it on an MP3 player and listen to it. And so we flagged the scanned material that we hoped would be replaced for the next cohort coming through. Responsibility. How do we make thinking like a co-op member a key part of the learning experience? Because that's really what has to happen, is that I'm here not just because I work for Credit Union A and I'm taking this course because I know it's important, and when I come back I'm going to share with no, that's part of it, but the other part of it is becoming completely engaged with the people that you're in that cohort with, to broaden your own perspectives and make that work, and also to be responsible. If the collective is better when all works together, then we take away from everyone's experience if we pull ourselves out of that, right? So we established grading rubric link protocols. If you don't measure it, you don't value it. So we valued it and we measured it, and it became part of your grade in terms of ensuring that we meet deadlines. And late posting, late posting is one of the things. I've seen this in my cohort back in the day. The deadline for posting is, let's say, 12 o'clock, midnight. And so somebody waits until 11 o'clock and post, and they're done. Well, they've technically done in terms of the expectations of, you have to respond to everybody's post, but they haven't. It's like they either didn't value what they had to say enough to want other people to benefit from it, or they didn't really care that feedback from others on what they had to say was a learning experience for them. So, I said, if you post at the end of the discussion period, it's like walking into a party after everyone has left, saying something and talking to the wallpaper, and maybe expecting people to come back and listen to you. Late posting's a problem, and meeting deadlines important. It's all part of responsibility. Pulling your weight and sharing your voice. Engagement. So this is the secret sauce of St. Mary's Co-op Management Education Program. And we've talked about this a little bit already. When you have individual learning, it's one directional. The co-op learning, multi-directional, Brightspace discussion boards are wonderful. And you know, this Brightspace is so much better than the Blackboard that we worked with. It's a wonderfully powerful system. And in fact, this is something that Tom shared with me, and I think he's absolutely right. Some people say, well, you know, it's online, it's not as engaged, it's a little bit more distant, I'd rather face-to-face. But in a face-to-face group, let's say of 12 people, you know, you may have 4 or 5 of them participate, a few will dominate, and it's all sort of off the top of your head, where on these discussion strings, it's thoughtful, you learn from each other, and you do participate because it's measured and part of your grade. Reciprocity. Stefano is probably my favorite economist and cooperator, and my most favorite parts of Stefano's teachings is about reciprocity. And you know, he talks about how distinct from exchange of equivalence, which is the market, I pay, I take, you take the pay, we have no relationship with one another after that. And philanthropy, which is governments or organizations, here, I'll give you this, no, you don't, I don't need anything back, which is sort of dehumanizing. Reciprocity says, when I willingly and with no strings attached do something for you because you have a need and I can fill it, because I want to help you meet those needs, and because I know, or I believe down the road, if I am in need, somebody would do the same for me, proportional to capacity. And reciprocity, mutualism, of course, is a key characteristic of co-op. So reciprocity is one of the focus that would change in the cohort learning experience if they were a co-op. So how do we add reciprocity as a trial focus value to see how these ideas play out? I try to introduce it as, you need to think of the people who are coming after you in this course and the people who have come before you, and view yourself as part of this commons, part of this continuum of people who are learning about cooperatives because they want to make a positive change in the world. And so for an example, Tom's course is a very heavy course in terms of readings, and there's going to be some restructuring. This happens regularly with courses, and so I wanted to give them the opportunity to rate the assignments and videos. So at the end of each module, in addition to getting all their posting done and going, phew, they had to also take the time to put a 5-star rating on everything they read or saw, and they could add comments if they wanted. And they got no points for this. This was done because it was going to help the people who came behind them, and critically important help that was. And everybody participated, and it was part of the report that went to CME after the program. A second example, thinking forward again, but also thinking back to looking to this alumni association cooperative that we have. There were 3 ideas that came forward that I was sort of charged with backpacking to the front, as it were. One was, and I keep putting this out, we need to do a very serious Tom tribute, and I think that this is something that CMEC should take on. Enough said. I think everybody who's met Tom understands this one. And he has just retired this year. So the second was a nice idea about taking Kate Rayworth's donut and incorporating some co-op learning in it by basically icing her donut with some prints of 17 or 18 types of cooperatives that meet the idea of fulfilling human development needs while staying within the planetary ecological limits. And so they wanted to stay connected with that, and I said I would try and see whether we can get some traction. and talk to Ed Mayo in England, who is certainly closer to Kate than we are, and Tom Webb and others are interested in trying to play with that. This is the kind of thing where we could turn to the alumni and student cooperative, which I hope you're all, I mean, you all are members are, I'm sure, and say, okay, we're looking for 16 thumbnails of co-ops in the social side and the energy side and the health side and the housing side, in the consumer co-op side and the agriculture side. We want to come up with 16 thumbnail sketches of co-ops that can ice Kate's donut, and then we'll bring that to her and try and get her to talk about that. And you who
Wendy,
are, yeah?
Sorry to interrupt. People just wanted a bit more context on that because not everyone's familiar with that concept.
Okay, I'm just going to finish. So you who are alumni are able to, if we said to you, we're looking for really good little examples that we can thumbnail of energy co-ops. We're looking for really good examples that we can thumbnail of ag co-ops. We can draw together from the rich experience of the alumni who have gone through this program pretty quickly these examples. Kate's Donut is Raworth, R-A-W-O-R-T-H, looks at the extent to which we are satisfying human needs, the inside ring of the donut, and living within ecological limits, the outside ring of the donut, and shows where each of these is falling short, and sort of is a measure of where we have to come back into. It's definitely worth it. Google it. But she doesn't speak about co-ops. She's a very, she's done, look at her TED Talk is probably the nicest one. And we thought we need to get Kate to talk about co-ops and how co-ops are the ideal links to be able to live within our limits and satisfy our human needs. And so I talked to Ed about this, and he said we need to put it in terms that she can understand, like her donut. So the idea of icing Kate's donuts with some co-op thumbnails came from that. And I was also asked, as I backpack out of that cohort, to advance the discussion of a learning cohort because, sorry, a learning co-op, because there was a lot of interest in how this could work and that it might be a good idea. And so this is the kind of thing that I would like to throw to the CMEC. CME, as we put it to, and also CMEC. And this is why we're having this webinar. The report, course analytics, went to CME, and CME organized this webinar as a result. Thing 4. We have a lot of super knowledgeable professionals, but many of them have never been a member of a worker co-op. And so they are part of producer co-ops or buyer co-ops, financial co-ops, insurance co-ops, energy co-ops, and they have a lot of understanding of co-op principles and a lot of expertise to share, but they lack the experience of working cooperatively together as equals. And so another reason why this idea of a learning co-op makes sense is that it gives an opportunity to learn and integrate co-op principles and values like reciprocity and mutuality and responsibility and engagement and democracy through the creation of a little informal co-op that you work through for 3.5 years and come out the end better for it. And as I said, particularly since, as John McNamara points out, everything works better that way. Imagine, what if at summer orientation, cohorts were able to participate in a supported, facilitated workshop that gave them the choice if they wanted to come together and work together as members of a cohort-specific informal learning co-op. And what if such little informal learning co-ops, so you've got the learning commons, right? And you've got all these little indentations part of that commons filled with little learning co-ops as cohorts that pledge to CMEASC on graduation. And what if cooperative knowledge, expertise, and networks, the co-op commons, could be amazingly strengthened and energized through this process? In the words of both John Lennon and Tom Webb, imagine co-ops. We are the solution you've been waiting for. We are trained and empowered to take our place in the 21st century economy. We are ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
There, I get you back.
Okay, great.
Good.
So that was wonderfully powerful. And I think, like you said, an extenuation of much of the work.
Of what?
Of much of the work that has come to bring us to where we are today. Many of the thinkers and the advocates and the people who have worked really hard. And I think that can be said for all of the folks that participate in this education who are on the call here today. So I did want to open it up now for folks to either raise their hand or to type a comment or a question into the chat box for you to give reflections, ideas, tell us where you see this playing out and where you feel challenged by it too. I think one of the things that we've heard a lot about within our office in Co-op Management Education is that there's a recalibration that is tricky for folks because we are located, which a lot of people love that, but what we do is that we get to offer certificates and degrees and things that have currency in the wider world and that are rigorous and have the evaluation and everything to have this be a sure thing in terms of people's learning experience. But at the same time, because we're located in a university institution, I think that there's a bit of some assumptions that people come with in terms of how learning, like, nice branding, I like that. There's no like Coca-Cola coming up, just choose like that. So yeah, a lot of people have said to us that there's a bit of a grind in terms of reestablishing what it means to be part of a learning environment like this, because typically within institutions like universities, there's a hierarchy. And so when something needs to be renegotiated, like a deadline or something has come up in life, people think, okay, this is a conversation I need to have with an instructor, without thinking I'm actually part of a cohort that relies on me, and that I'm going to miss out on what they're saying and the engagement with them. So I'm sort of lessening my own learning in that way. So we do see people grind through that learning at first because they're not used to having this type of learning experience at this level.
I also think, just because I might forget to say it if I don't say it now, but setting up the mechanics of this would be a heck of a capstone.
Yeah. I see, there's 4 people that just volunteered to do that. That's great. Okay, let's see a couple other things that came up there. So also in terms of the hierarchy that we see sometimes in higher learning institutions, which is the sort of like the person on the pedestal with the knowledge, and then folks sort of meaning to extract from that. And I think that's another recalibration that people have to, you're coming into this, not only do you get the value of the curation of the content and the instructor who has, in many cases, lived experience, teaching experience, research experience. They've been on co-op boards. They've, participated often for decades in this work. But you're also getting all of those case studies that are the lived experience of your peers. And I find that sometimes people forget that that is just as rich.
And also, challenging things that we who've been doing it forever and on these boards and everything else, you need a reset. And people in the, learners in the cohort who are just coming along brand new and challenge our thinking in a way that brings us to a better integration and perspective on that thinking. So
absolutely. Okay.
But it requires, it's not only the students. This has to work on both sides. It has to work with the learning leader or guide, as well as with the learners. They're a fit together. So
Absolutely.
it requires something of the educator, let's say, from who's leading the course as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we have a lot of instructors also here today on the call, right? So we love that because it's something that we really are crafting together. And we were lucky back in the spring to bring a number of our longtime instructors together in Montreal because people are all over the world. That's the beauty of being able to cherry pick our instructors to have the best fit for the program. But we don't always get to spend time together. So it was amazing to get together and really look at what's the student experience, what's the thread of that experience throughout the program, where are the gaps. And, you know, it's worth saying that students greatly influence, because of your own lived experience in the co-op economy, what it is that we do and how it is that we evolve the programs every year. So, for example, something that's coming up even these last couple of weeks that we're, you know, really faced with, and I think really looking to address, is the amount of diversity in terms of what we see in inclusion, in terms of the kinds of content that we're choosing for the courses and the examples, and, you know, representing solidarity groups in the work that we do and who we explore. So, you know, these are things that come up from students that need to be said and that really do influence how things evolve. So,
And
yeah.
CME is constantly looking at upgrading that program to make it as relevant as it can be for the moment. And a really important part of that process is the experience of the students with the program. Because it's, you know, you can sit back and say, well, we think maybe this, we think maybe that, but a really important stream in that conversation has to come from the learners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got a few questions that have come in. So, and this came in a little, let's see. So Patty Smith, first year student, has asked, can you speak more about what an informal learning co-op would look like in terms of structure, expectations, bylaws, and so forth?
No. What I'm, and hi, Patty. We're sort of at the edge of exploring this concept. I think first of all, it would need to be the students themselves, the learners themselves, who would identify that, and each learning co-op may define things slightly different depending on the discussions they had with their peers in that orientation. The question is, after 3.5 years and a fair chunk of change, you are expecting a product from this time, very valuable time of yours, that is going to enhance your understanding of and capacity to lead cooperative change. How that works best for you is what's going to make it work best for you and for the group. And so that product, that learning outcome, is the product that you as a cooperative can enhance and create better by working together. So how do you lift that product up as a cohort to its highest value so that when you get out, you are taking away the most you can from this program? That conversation, a facilitated discussion of that conversation, would be the first step at orientation to begin to set up what your cohort's learning co-op might look like. But we're just exploring this now in 5110, again, as we did in 5210, to start that discussion. So I look for your input on that answer.
Okay, good. So we've got another question, and I'm actually going to unmute you, Louis, if you are able to articulate this, because in your question you referenced the Co-op Management Education Co-op, and I just wanted to double check if that's the entity, because we have so many CME acronyms, CMAC, CME, ASC, the Alumni and Student Group, and we have this cooperative that oversees the education, if you will, and helps us evolve it, who are not a group of students, but rather sector folks, alumni, and so forth. So I will unmute you so we make sure that we have that clear. Let's see. Here we go, Louis. Okay. Okay, so Louis, you should get an audio pin that allows you to unmute yourself. Sorry that that's complicated. We'll just double check for a couple other questions in the meantime. Let's see. Oh my gosh, so many great people here. This is wonderful to see.
This is the, can you see my screen? Can
No,
you
but
see my screen?
I can change you to the presenter. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, so just out of interest, these are the CMEC members that, so there are 36 co-ops and credit unions, all the way from Arctic co-ops to Fredericton Direct Exchange, basically all the major players, I think, in Canada. If they're not, we just haven't gotten them yet. And then there are individuals, and then there are educational institutions. And so, you know, look at the educational institutions: Cork, UK, USA, Australia, UK, Canada, Finland, New Zealand. We have a really broad network that we can access here.
Absolutely.
That's all I wanted to do, was just share that.
Absolutely, and not everybody knows that, because we have this pretty brilliant constellation, and so these folks who are part of the Co-op Management Education Co-op, we've got a board that we connect with most often. We also connect with all those members once a year at a digital virtual annual meeting. We do call on some of those folks in terms of being experts or being advisors and things like that. But the board that's elected from that group of people really does help and influence the education that we do. And it's the reason why we've done things like evolved into having executive education courses and offering a certificate program. It's getting feedback that has been really helpful in making sure that we're meeting the needs of the sector, because again, these programs are not this thing that was a brainchild of the university. It was very much the sector saying there's a need. And so a lot of these folks that you see listed on the Co-op Management Education Co-op grouping are the folks that have stepped forward to either finance the startup of these programs or offer scholarships throughout. They're champions themselves within their own organizations to ensure that students continue to engage in this education. You know, they're people that, again, are thought leaders and can help us in the evolution. So it's been quite good. Okay, so yes, so Louis is there. I'm just going to check one more time if I can unmute him. Okay, I can't, so I will read his question aloud. Okay, so here we go. So Louis has asked, okay, cooperation is the intersection of ideology and pragmatism. I get the ideology behind the Co-op Management Education Co-op. Pragmatically, what is this co-op's value proposition? Let's see, there's a second part to that. Okay, yeah, let's start with that. So maybe
So
I
he's
just
talking
answered
about
that question a bit.
CMEC. I think you answered
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the leadership that they've taken and even the financial resources that they've contributed. And in validating the whole creation of these programs too, it was very much the sector making the pitch again to, Wendy mentioned Colin Dodds, the president of St. Mary's University at the time, who was thankfully someone from rural UK who knew very well what cooperatives can do in communities, but who had the appetite to at least explore this. And then with the support of the sector and the financing of the sector, we were able to get this off the ground. Great, let's see, lots of other good things here. So, and we'd also like to open up the floor to folks that want to share about the experience within their cohorts, even if you're pretty fresh at things. I know we've got some certificate students, some first year students here. We've also got people who have, you know, been through a couple of years of this and hopefully have learned and transformed along with their class. And even instructors who are on the call who might want to share a bit about how this idea of having a learning co-op or having these values of cooperation within your format of these courses, how you already see that playing out, how it could play out, or where you think that maybe sometimes we fall a little short of achieving that. This is a bit of a confessional too, if anybody needs it.
while you're doing that, I'm just trying to bring up that better way to look at that CMEC membership, but I don't know if you can see all the stuff I'm bringing along on the screen, so maybe it's not
Oh no,
helpful.
I'm actually back to,
Oh, good.
I can
Okay.
just show people where on the website there, you'll see CMEC listed, CMEC listed there, and you can
Okay,
click
good. Yeah.
to see
I
the
had it
list.
as a slide and then I wound up taking it out. So,
Okay, so I heard from Louis again, who said that actually he was wanting to ask a bit more about the value proposition for the student and alumni cooperative, which I actually just spoke with their executive yesterday, and I think that they're grappling with that too in terms of leadership of that organization. Again, another important player in the constellation, but have typically, because they're alumni, they often, that means that most of them have got promotions, raises, started new cooperatives, joined new boards, all these things that have really forced them into a whole new realm of time commitment and pressure. So what that's meant was, in the past, I think that executive has struggled to always define their value proposition. I will say on a positive note, the last couple of years, they've been doing more consistent webinars and things like that to offer value. And I think with the foundational goal being to keep the conversation going, because many of you have noticed, especially if you're the only one in your co-op or organization that have done this education, you have access to a whole way of thinking about this, several different frameworks, a whole suite of language that a lot of your peers and colleagues, especially folks who have been hired maybe from outside of the co-op economy, that they don't necessarily have at their fingertips. And so in order to really keep that alive, it's really helpful to continue these dialogues and to be hearing what the new research is and what's going on in that way. So one of the things that the alumni group has been attempting to do is to have those webinars and have those calls and spaces where people can do that. That said, that hasn't happened for a few months. So it's
I
fair
think
that you asked the
also,
question, Louis.
yeah, and I think also we haven't done a great job in connecting the individual cohorts. Each cohort sort of feels autonomous. And I don't think that we have done a lot of work, certainly within the program. When you get out of the program, you're told, oh, well, there's this whole alumni association. But in the program, we haven't connected this continuum of learners, all of whom are motivated by the same thing, we expect, which is to build a better world. And the fact that this is a resource, this is a commons which you are part of. And the idea of talking about a learning co-op that then fledges up into this larger co-op, I think would help definitely create the traction between the groups.
Absolutely. And that's part of why we're doing this webinar today, is to say that while you are active, and we've got some alumni on the call too, and again, instructors, but lots of folks who are currently students, is to say we want to bring people together because there's something magic in your cohorts, and we've met these, I mean, we've seen decades on people who have remained extremely close to their cohorts, and I think there's something to be said about that. And probably a lot of the things you're talking about today is what they were able to achieve in their cohort that has that bond be so strong, and that reliance and that exchange be so strong even many years later. But I do think that there's something quite rich in knowing that it's not just your cohort, it's not just the people that you share classes with that you're now connected to. This community is bigger. And we do have the opportunity and challenge, of course, of being around the world. So it's not as if we all just happen to walk by each other in the hallway. But I do think it's fair to say that the tools are there for us to stay connected, even if we are all in different places and sometimes doing slightly different things too.
The issue is building the connective tissue.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair to say.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I think part of what you're pointing to today, Wendy, is that in some ways there's still that default in just our humanity, which is to say, is that not for someone else to take the lead on, as opposed to say, like, I want to stand for this despite what my role is and what this hierarchy appears to be, because that's not really, again, reinforcing this cooperative way that we want to approach all of this. Okay. Let's see, any other questions or comments? We'd love to hear from current students on your own reflections in your courses. I like the idea of a co-op lab. that's the opportunity of what you're talking about, Wendy,
Yeah,
with this
exactly.
co-op lab. Yeah.
Right.
And all of that challenge too around time and scheduling and all of the things that seem like logistical annoyances are really part of what it means to run a cooperative and to do group work, which is life, and which certainly is all of our lives because we live
Right.
in this cooperative space.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for it to work, I mean, you have to believe that a cooperative learning experience is an enhanced product from an individual learning experience. And once you believe that, then the product is the sum of the individual engagements as well as your own contribution. And so if you pull yourself out of that, you cheat the team. You may feel you don't need something for them, but you do. And if you don't realize it, they realize it, and you're pulling yourself back. You're not. You're diminishing that experience. But if you believe that that collective experience is going to make it better, then responsibility becomes an easier concept to wedge yourself to in the program, and it becomes easier to look at the kind of behavior that supports everybody else, because it's not just about you, it's about the team. And that's I think there's been some good take up of this idea so far. So in terms of the two courses I've had the privilege to work with. So
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we have another comment. This is from Patty as well, Patty Smith. And she said, having alums from various previous cohorts share their experience in forming their learning co-ops would be super valuable for the incoming cohort. She said our alumni guest, who is Jessica from the Cooperators, she was sharing her experiences. That was so helpful in expanding the element in orientation. If we did that before orientation, it could really support developing into a learning co-op. Absolutely. I think that some of those threads in terms of alumni involvement are showcasing what we're talking about here today, which is people not only as their active students, but then beyond being like, okay, we're part of this collective community. And so we have folks who have stepped forward as mentors. And that's something traditionally the alumni group had organized. And now that we sort of do it under our office umbrella instead, just based on logistics and making that all happen. So we do have that sort of mentorship alumni connection with current students. We do have folks come back to be speakers in courses. We have some who become instructors. So I would say that there is quite a thread in terms of this conversation today isn't about saying just that there are some deficits. I think it's worth naming the places where we could grow in order to have an even richer experience, of course. But it is neat to look at what's already happening in terms of those people in the courses, yourselves and some of your peers who really do step forward, and they understand reciprocity and they understand engagement, and they really take that on in a way where they come in with the perspective that everybody has to win for me to win. And that kind of attitude and action that falls from that, and of course, makes a huge difference for everybody.
And a follow-up response to Patty. I mean, I'm harvesting ideas right now for how this could work. And so any of you on this call, like Patty, who are in 5210, I will be producing a report from our course, and your ideas contributing to this concept will certainly be part of that. So I would encourage you to think about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, we just have a few minutes left. If anybody wants to get their voice in here, that would be okay. Someone's asking about, let's see. Someone's asking about, Joan, hi, asking about, let's see, where do I sign to adhere as a student or graduate accessing the collective exchange? I do witness the reciprocity between the learner and the instructor with Wendy, one of the best courses online I've taken so far. Wow, incredible.
Who's that from?
That's from Joan. Yeah. Among the list, I have not seen Desjardins. I was wondering why. Oh, in terms of folks who are part of that cooperative, right? Yeah, I think that there's,
Thanks, Joan.
yeah, thank you. There's lots of reasons why folks haven't become members. Some of it is that our outreach hasn't targeted the right leaders in the organization who really get this in order to want to be part of this. Sometimes it's because they already support other institutions. Sometimes there's the French English thing in Canada. So sometimes if like, folks in Quebec are supporting the business schools there who are doing some cooperative education, then they wouldn't necessarily also support us. So sometimes it's politics. I know nobody can believe that co-ops have politics, but sometimes they do.
I'd just like to add a comment, if I could, before we finish. The idea of a cohort coming up with an idea, like this idea of Kate's Donut, and being able to launch it beyond the end of that course, the ability to own an idea, or fledge an idea is a better word, and then feel that it's going to move forward and they can be kept advised of what happens with it, but the next cohort may have something to do with it. To take on collectively projects and ideas that have a life beyond the course, I think is also a point of inspiration and a point of impact that could really add zest to the experience. I think it's about getting that exact sweet spot, and I think that's part of it, because we came out with 3 ideas from the 2017 cohort, and we will probably come out with ideas from this one, and how we have to harvest those, and we have to put them in some kind of wheelbarrow and move them forward, and I think that that's part of the idea of this.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got another question here from Louis Campagna in second year saying, how much energy do we want to put into creating student activists to promote the worker ownership control benefit feature of existing consumer and financial cooperatives?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry.
Sure. How much energy do we want to put into creating student activists to promote the worker ownership control benefit, all of those things kind of connected, feature of existing consumer and financial co-ops?
So in other words, working more directly with young people who are demanding change to see co-ops as one of the vehicles for that? Is that the question? How much energy do we want to put into communication pieces to young people to understand and buy into and activate the need for co-ops? Was that the question?
He says, i.e. bring the good word to the co-op pagans out there. Reminds me, excuse me, of a quote from a young co-op entrepreneur that presented during a recent field study to Spain. If you do co-op without including workers as owners, then you're cheating. Okay, so it sounds like bringing into the existing cooperatives this idea that employees could be owners.
Absolutely.
Folks that don't currently have that.
I think that energy and passion comes from those of us who are inspired by it. And each of us, if we feel an idea is really important, we have to look at drawing together colleagues to move it forward. And that's where these wonderful CMEASC organizations give us the pool to be able to fish for that support and say, how can we go forward with this?
Absolutely. And I will end just on a note here saying that we've got Tara Williams from our alumni group here on the call today, who has said that they want to connect with you, Wendy, because I know that she's a very inspired person. So are many folks on that executive, just looking to find good footing underneath of them.
Absolutely. I am here. Here. This is here, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Just sharing with you the West Coast.
That's right. I won't show you the East Coast. Pretty windy here today. But I will say thank you to everyone. We've now reached the hour together. And thanks again for those. Oh, and thanks, Wendy. I mean, thank you for bringing this forward for making opportunities for students to be able to influence this direction in a really meaningful way, even deeper, I think, than we've gone before. And for the instructors and students and alum and all the folks on the line who want to be part of this conversation and to maybe think a little bit differently, a little bit more nuanced in terms of your own participation in this community. You know, we are growing this together. It's on the shoulders of folks like you that we stand in building this education and this community forward. And so let's honor them too by keeping this up and keeping to evolve it.
We've got a mind meld here, because I was just going to say we're standing on the shoulders of Tom and all these people. So good stuff. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'll close off the recording so that we can share this with others too. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks.